We built this city on rock and roll. Built this city. We built this city on rock and roll.
Krishna, Krishna, Krishna.
A pleasant God bless day to all. My name is Navin Dindial. It is certainly my great pleasure to express my heartfelt gratitude to God and my spiritual master for blessing me with a wonderful talent to design and construct architectural buildings.
Grew up here, which is Cynthia Smith, they are
Yes.
Santa Margarita.
Yes, yeah.
All right, so I was all around here, and I tell a lot of the people who work with me sometimes that all of that was. I remember they had a big sugar factory.
A factory.
Right. You understand, right off of there. And as a little kid walking, I'm talking about 3, 4 years old. In those days, you could walk anywhere.
Yeah.
You didn't have the problems you have today. There were these oxen carts that would bring all the sugar cane and stuff to the factory.
And the smell of the molasses.
You understand? And I was pulling little pieces off, and there were a bunch of tonka bean trees all around the ICTA.
Well, I just want to add the significance of the tonka bean trees. There are still 1 or 2 around where I am driving. And the tonka bean was part of the spices added to the cocoa.
Right.
And the research center for cocoa is still there at the University of the West Indies. You understand? But tonka bean served a purpose in making the cocoa powder and preserving the cocoa powder and adding flavor to the cocoa.
Yes.
Right? Tonka bean was grown in adjunction with the cocoa. Yeah, so it's interesting that you made that observation with
you
the
see,
tonka bean.
now here's what happened. As I say, I of course grew up here, and we moved into Port of Spain. I went to Gracia, I went away, and so I went for years and years and came back. And the building was really tottering. I mean, it was on its last legs. And my feeling was, and this is where the heresy or the heretic comes in. I said, what you all doing with this old building here? It's falling apart. And if you go in the porch, for instance, and you look on the tile, you'll see where it was actually, this is it, and it was falling like this and that. And you could still see the cracks where it was breaking
it's
apart.
Interesting because
and we went under it and jacked it up and got it back flat and rehabbed it. It's covered now, but you went inside.
Well, it's interesting that you said that, because the first thing when I came to the porch, right, I as an intruder, that was the first observation I made to Mr. Navin. I said, look at the tile.
Right.
This has been jacked.
Right. Yeah, you
The
saw that.
First, yes, the
Yeah.
first observation. I
Right.
said, and it needs a little more delicate restoration at this point in time. That was
Right.
my first observation this morning.
Because you can't get that tile anywhere.
No,
That's
you
the
can't.
thing, You know, so what happened was that, my cousin up the hill, and there were 3 girls. Miss Doyle, I don't know if you remember her.
no, I
She was right at the back there in St. John's Road. And so they were like, they were just a few years older than me, you know, but they were the ones that took care of me as a little kid, you know, they'd walk around with me and all this kind of stuff. And one that has lived in the States now for like 70 years, I think I'm home for, she went insane when I talked about, you know, what you know, that old building, you know, and she gave me the history, just like you're giving me. She gave me the history of it.
But what's the history?
And I didn't
We'd
know
like to
that that actually the students that come down here, architecture students, and they come and they take them to the Magnificent Seven and Mount St. Benedict and so
Right.
forth, so they also bring them here. And I didn't know all this. I forget the name of the architect. He's a Trinidad guy that teaches at Howard. God, I can't remember his name. It'll come to me in a while. But he brings them down and so. And, you know, all of a sudden I started to understand the history. You know, because
And
all
they
I
need-
remember.
And they need to preserve.
You understand, you know, and this is really how I came to, I say, let me pay attention to the building and see what I could do and jack it up and this and that and try to, you know,
Yes.
preserve it, you know, and also the lamp at the front.
Well, I'm very nervous
Now
about the security of that lamp.
This is the Audubon part that you're talking about. The Audubon is really has to do with sound and voice in French. And what the words say, you know,
In Latin.
ouvre asu, or something like that. Basically what it says is, my heart opens at your voice. You understand? And this is basically what that lamp says. And it's actually a part of a love story that has to do with my uncle, who was the one that had the place built back in whatever, it had to be like the 30s or something like that. He had gone to the States and had done quite well, and he was going to come back home. And so what happened is when the blacks in the South were free and they moved up to the North, what happened is a lot of them that did well, they wanted to sort of, it's almost contradictory. They wanted to have houses like their masters had. Now this would be in the 1800s.
The symbolism of
Yes.
affluence.
Yes.
So you understand. So that this artist, well, he's an architect, was an architect, Frank Lloyd Wright.
Yeah.
Actually, that did
But he's world
very,
famous.
very lavish houses and stuff. He decided to do some smaller houses that reflected some of the you know, the sentiments.
The elements, the aesthetic elements.
So if you look at it when you come in, you notice how the stairs are like that.
I noticed.
Yes.
You understand?
We noticed.
And the way, look, if you look at the roof, it has a curve,
A curve,
that
yes,
goes
a
like
curve.
this. And so he incorporated that into his designs. And he actually sold these plans through the Sears Roebuck catalog. You must remember that.
Yes.
Because as kids, I
Yes,
mean, you know,
yes.
you got a Sears Roebuck
Yes,
catalog.
yes,
You
yes.
looked at all these wonderful
Yes.
things that you could
Whether
get
you
from
could afford
Sears.
it or not.
Yeah, but just looking at it was wonderful, you know. So he sold the plans through the catalogs and so. And my uncle bought one of the plans. And he
Incredible.
sent it down here.
Okay.
And
Incredible.
then some of his brothers that had not gone to the States, and so most of them had migrated, but there were a couple of them here that hadn't. And they actually built the house for him. You understand? Now the story kind of goes downhill from there because they didn't quite stick to the plans. So when he came back now, about maybe 20 years after the house had built, he had never seen it. And he came back and he was furious because you know, it was supposed to have another bedroom and it wasn't there and this and that, and he couldn't understand how they could you know, not follow the plans, you know, directly.
Precisely.
And he never lived in the house. Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing.
He actually, what he did was that, if you notice, there's a wire fence around the house.
Yes.
I don't like the fence.
Huh?
I don't like
Well,
the fence.
he put the fence in to just, he didn't want to have anything to do with it. And he built here. Now this place was, so he lived across here when he came back. And this room here was full of records. He was heavy into like Paul Robeson and Moscow Symphony, and he
Gramophone
was into
era.
all this kind of thing, you know. And there's a picture back there that shows, like, I think it's the New York Philharmonic or something that he was part of, and all this kind of thing. And he brought back what in those days were like what you call today state-of-the-art equipment, you know, audio equipment, you know, gramophones and this kind of thing. And he'd sit in this room surrounded by these hundreds of these albums in those days and play all this music real loud and stuff. And that was his thing. And that's why if you look at this building here, this room here is about more than 50% of the building. His bedroom was about
Tiny.
wide as, yeah,
Tiny
and
bedroom.
the kitchen was very small.
Unimportant.
You know, because that was what he was interested in. And he'd sit and listen to it. So after he passed away, a lot of these records, and so the question was, what were we going to do with it? Well, not really. I was still young and, you know, crazy and not into the old stuff, you know. And they gave a lot of this to UE. Now, I don't know whatever happened to them, but a lot of this music, you know, was given to UE because it was, you know. So anyway, that's a brief history of Audubon, you know, and the tie-in with
Well, I find it a totally amazing story, and we need to come back and to do a little more intensive and to write it and to share it. You see, one of the things about preservation and one of the things about storytelling of the people who are in the past, it gives us a sense of their accomplishments, and that we must also build on their accomplishments and the plateaus that they have left us. And this is what you have done.
Well, you see, this is what I was talking about earlier on, the conversation I had with this friend of mine, that it's not that the younger kids are not interested in the older. They don't really get
They
those
don't,
stories.
no, no.
Storytelling is what you're talking about. They don't get the stories. They don't get to tell the stories. They don't hear the stories. And also, a lot of times, they don't share now with the grandfathers and the great-grandfathers. Because, listen, I refuse to believe, I mean, starting with myself, that somebody 80, 90 years old would not be fascinated by a cell phone. You know, because they remember the old phones when they, okay?
Yes.
And when they see what a phone could do, this will fascinate anybody. But that communication that you're talking about, that creates that link, that forms the structure, you know, that historical structure, and so.
But you see, one of the things we talk about creativity, and we talk about finding solutions, and we talk about development of societies. But if we look at societies like the Japanese, or we look at the Italians, Michelangelo in 1500s, every single ducat, gold coin that he ever earned as a great artist for the Pope, he gave to his nieces and nephews. And 500 or 600 years afterwards, the villas that they bought are still in the family of Michelangelo.
Okay.
You understand?
Right.
And it is all about giving people self-esteem, giving people their dignity, giving people their sense of worth in society. When we talk about all the social ills that our society is undergoing, you become very important, because when you give me the story of Villa Audubon, you understand? My imagination ignites once more.
Right.
Right? And so too will the imagination of every visitor to come.
Of whatever age.
Of whatever age.
Yeah.
Whether it's 5 years,
Sure,
whether it's
sure,
50 years, whether it's
sure.
90 years. Right? And it is that igniting of the imaginative process that makes us a people.
Right, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Because then the past, I'll repeat it again, the past, the present, and the future are all merged.
Connected, yeah.
And they are
sure,
all connected.
sure, yeah.
And I feel it a great honor that you have undertaken this massive project called Gertrude Gardens, because you see the building there, Villa Audubon, is the jewel in Gertrude Gardens.
Well, Gertrude, by the way, where did that name come from, was really my grandmother, who was the mother, really, of the same uncle that built here, you know. And her story was fascinating also, because she started off as a Jewish child in what is called Sephardic, well, it was Israel in those days, Sephardia, all right? It was like a shepherd community type of thing in that region. And what happened, now you remember you talk about the Nazis and all this kind of stuff, they had to flee, you see, and they fled into Spain. And then from there on, they came across, actually now what happened is the Panama Canal was being built. And if you go to like Jamaica, you find a lot of black Jews and so forth there. Well, that was because the number of them that came over, I went to work on the canal, and they accumulated some money and so forth, and they were, you know, they were thrifty and they saved and this and that, and then they came into the, came back now out of the Panama Canal after it was built, and they settled all inside of the Caribbean and stuff, which was, you know, that protective link.
Well,
that really was.
It's interesting you say that, because many people who subscribe to the Rastafari movement do not know the fleeing of the Jews, right? And many of them were colored Jews, right?
Exactly.
And that the entire Rastafari movement, where many of them settled in Jamaica, Haile Selassie I, son of Solomon and Sheba,
right?
You understand?
Line
it was
of
all
Judah,
Jewish.
and
The
all
line
that.
of
Exactly.
Judah was all Jewish. And that Jewish ideology lives on today in the Rastafari movement. You understand?
So
and
all these, as you say, they all link together,
all
you
these
know,
facets.
and it's a fascinating story, really, you know, you know, because another thing too is this, there are settlements in Panama and Costa Rica and so forth of some of these folks that settled, and to this day they have their own communities and things like that, you know. But you see, coming back again to what I believe is that if the younger folks are exposed to that sort of storytelling and that knowledge and so forth, they cannot help but be fascinated by it, because it's their story. You know what I mean? It's my story and your story and our forefather's story and our kids' story. You know, and so let's say we're in the middle there, okay? We are the parents of children and grandchildren, and then on the other side we have our mothers, fathers, and all of these links. You know, it's true stories.
Well, we can only go forward if we know where we came from.
You know, exactly.
So,
you know,
another point of what you are saying, Angelo Bissessarsingh, who was the historian, his son, had this vision of using the Facebook forum to develop a virtual museum of Trinidad and Tobago. So he used Facebook as a link where he will get the young, he will get the old sharing the stories, and this is what BIMAT is all about, the virtual museum, is that we collect stories, right? So your story will appear on BIMAT too.
And you have to come back in a more convenient time to you to document it with all the details. And I feel it's a great honor to be here, and I feel it.
But I am the one that's honored. I mean, I appreciate the fact that you take the time to talk to me.
But
Really.
it started a movement, and that movement has grown into thousands throughout the world, right?
More than 222,000
Wherever people are there and they have Trinidad roots. They are sharing stories. It has gone beyond what Angelo started, where he started sharing his stories about the past and historical building. It has taken roots and gone even further in that the members now are sharing their legacies, their stories, historical buildings, and we have a lot of young people
coming on board
at this point in time.
That's
right?
great.
And they too are getting interested. I was telling my
the
brother
stories live
up,
on through that.
Long ago, you will convince these young people to part with things that their ancestors left behind. We are finding difficulty because of virtual museum, and they are seeing the importance of this legacy. They are keeping it for themselves, and they are not parting with it.
But one of the things I want to mention is when I came, I saw one of the few remaining calabash trees outside. You understand?
It was
with your permission, I'm going to take one to propagate the seeds. Because
it's not a problem.
The historical significance of that tree, I'm not sure of it, but as I said, it's indigenous from the days of the Amerindian, the first people, down to the present. And what is the potential? You understand? We all talk about tourism and diversification. But what is the potential if people like yourself do not preserve this? That building that has many of the elements, right, of Frank Lloyd. You understand? Maybe that is the only building in Trinidad and Tobago that I know about, that I personally, in my humble opinion, know about, that has those elements. When I saw how this tile, the floor, the slope of the roof, you understand?
Right,
I told Navin, I said, Navin, there is something more about this building, and we need to preserve the building.
Yeah.
And I just want to mention one thing about preservation. Now there are modern materials that could preserve a building. A lot of people say, well, hello, no, we can't get it. There are modern materials that will preserve that building for generation next.
Right.
You understand? And this is where the social responsibility comes in.
Well,
and what I'm happy to say,
No, go ahead.
What I'm happy to say is that you are not waiting on any agency. You are doing that on your own volition. And that is what is great about it.
Well, as I said, I didn't always start off with that sort of mindset. But when I started to hear the stories, and the person you really need to talk to is this cousin of mine that lives in New York. I mean, she knows the whole thing. She's almost like like every family has a storyteller, one that was interested in the stories of Granny and all that kind of stuff. And she's the one that really, when she shared her stories, all of a sudden I bought into it, and that was it. I mean, that was it. And I see, for instance, the Calabash tree, how many people passing would come by and say, can we get one, this and that, and
while we were driving through, and I also went to the almond tree that maybe is the largest almond tree I've ever seen. Even photographs on the internet, I have not seen an almond tree as large as that. I took up some seeds.
Right.
Because I just want to say briefly on camera, what is the importance of taking up seeds? And I share this with everybody. If a tree has resisted tropical elements, termites, funguses, heat, scorching droughts for 150 or 200 years,
genetics of it.
The genetics, the wiring of that genetics needs to be preserved. And this is why I'm very, very, very concerned where people are not preserving these seeds.
Yeah.
You understand? So I took up a handful of the almond seeds, and I said, I'm going to try to get one to grow.
Well, listen, you're welcome anytime. Get seeds. The calabash tree, to me, is just a fascinating tree. I mean, every time I pass over, sometimes it just has so many and large ones all around it. Right now it doesn't have that many, but you cannot believe when that tree is in its, when it pumps out calabashes like
I wonder if we could work around that tree.
You will get like 20, 30 of them at one time. I'm not kidding. They'd be all over. They'd be dropping on the ground and stuff.
But the significance of the tree, sir, is the role it played in our African heritage, and the role it played with the first peoples, and the role it played with the East Indians who came. You understand? And the role it played with the religion.
Sure.
And there are so many symbolic facets of the calabash.
The calabash,
tree.
Of course, yes, sure.
And that is why that tree, I do not know how we are going to do it. I don't know how you are going to do it, but it needs to be preserved.
Yeah. Another thing now, I don't know whether people see this all over, but there are two. Forget the name of the plant. No. There are two trees. One is at kind of this end, and one is then. And what happens is that butterflies come and they take one tree and they lay their eggs and stuff on the leaves, and then the caterpillars.
I saw them outside.
All right.
Black and yellow.
And they will totally eat every single.
The white frangipani.
Frangipani, that's the name of it. And they eat every single leaf. And I see this every year. It fascinates me. And then all of a sudden one day, you start seeing butterflies in twos as the caterpillars are molting and this and that and so forth. And when they leave, that tree is totally devoid of any leaves. They say, oh my God, the tree's going to die. So what happens the next time they come on the next tree and they do the same thing again. And in the meantime, while they are basically feeding themselves and devouring themselves and devouring the leaves and creating new butterflies, this tree is renourishing itself and it's getting leaves back. And it's a fascinating thing to see.
Symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, and for some reason they come out in like twos. And you see like two of them, flying going down the road, and another two going this way, another two, and then they're all gone. And the tree it does not have a single leaf left. And they say, well, this time they did it. This time the tree is dead. No way. The next time they go on the next tree, Now, that communication, I don't understand how that happens. How do they know, well, this is, the other
And is
tree,
the tree inviting them really to
something,
as a cleaning
and you get the
process?
smell of it or
As a
something.
cleaning process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the other one would go back, and but it's fascinating, and
But I feel deeply honored, and I think you carry a tremendous social responsibility. And I think that the people who will subscribe as people to live in Gertrude Gardens, I think that they will be part of a legacy that will live on long after, for years to come.
Well, to tell you the truth, my mind didn't go that far, you know what I mean? But it's interesting what you say, and I really appreciate it, because once again, you give me a new appreciation also,
Thanks.
or added
Thanks.
appreciation, of the place,
Well,
It's
I
a
think
pleasure.
that-
It's a good
Well,
pleasure.
it has been my pleasure.
I appreciate you coming and chatting with me. Thanks a whole lot. That's it.
I think you got an award-winning documentary here, Navin.
All we will need is a picture with you.
We built this city. We built this city on rock and roll. Built this city. We built this city on rock and roll. Say you don't know me, I recognize my face. Say you don't care who goes to that kind of place. Knee deep in the hoopla, sinking in your fight. Too many runaways, eating up the night. Marconi plays the mama. Listen to the radio. Don't you remember? We built this city. We built this city on rock and roll. We built this city. We built this city on rock and roll. Built this city. We built this city on rock and roll.
Many Venezuelans come to Trinidad. When I was a boy, in the backwoods of Carapal and Rancho, I saw some of the most beautiful women who married some of the not so good looking men, but they were fleeing persecution and civil unrest in
My dad
Venezuela.
was from El Callao,
Right.
which was like Mobile.
Well, I'm welcome. I'm happy you came to Trinidad.
Thank you.
But all the best we have to.